What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. I'm Justin Spears. Here's my guy, Michael Lev. It is Monday, start of a brand new week. Arizona football fresh off their 61-39 win over the New Mexico Lobos, getting the Brent Brennan era off to a promising start, albeit not everything was totally perfect. We'll break down everything that we saw from Arizona's season opening win over New Mexico on Saturday night. And we'll also get to your mailbag questions later on in the podcast as well. As always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And also check out all of our coverage of Arizona football this season at Tucson.com and the recently upgraded Wildcaster mobile app. Lots of cool things on that new app. So, Lev, before we get to the podcast, let's just start off with the story of the night. It wasn't Brent Brennan getting his first win at Arizona. It was how the Wildcats got their first win at Arizona. It was on the shoulders of one Tetaroa McMillan, the guy who set the program record for receiving yards in a game, passing Jeremy McDaniel, who had it with 283. T-Mac did it with over 304 yards, 10 catches, 4 touchdowns, which also tied an Arizona football record, tying his former buddy Jacob Cowing, who said it last year. I mean, to me, I've seen a lot of great receiving performances in person, Lev. I don't think I've seen anything quite like that. And I was there in person to see Marquise Lee go off against Arizona when he was at USC. And I've seen Austin Hill at Arizona have that incredible game as well. But the way T-Mac was able to maneuver through New Mexico's secondary, that one touchdown where Noah Fafita put it right in his stride and he ran down the New Mexico sideline for like a 78-yard touchdown. I've never seen a receiver like him at Arizona. And, we have always talked about the evolution of T-Mac as a wide receiver. And boy, as a junior, this guy looks like the best receiver in college football.
I thought you were going to say that the fact that it was a scoregami game was the story of the night.
Oh, was it?
Apparently there's never been a 61-39 game in the history of college football before this past Saturday night at Arizona Stadium.
All of football, not just Arizona.
Yeah. Oh, is it all of football?
All of football.
Okay.
That's what you said.
Is that what I thought scoregami was sort of like level specific.
Okay.
But if you want to, I don't know if there's ever been an NFL game. Definitely never been a college game that was 61-39. But, coming into the season, we talked about how it was possible that all this work that Tetaroa McMillan was doing on the side because he was rehabbing an injury would actually help him, right? It was a lot of like very specific like footwork. He was zigzagging, he was stopping and starting, like the type of stuff that coaches and players would label technique, right? Meanwhile, he's also working to get his body stronger, to make sure that whatever the injury was, the rest of his body was going to be so strong and he's going to be in such good shape that he's not going to, re-injure himself in any shape or form. And what we saw on Saturday night was, T-Mac fully formed, right? It was the total package. If there was a ball that a contested catch, he'd go up and get it. If there was a ball where he had to kind of post up on the cornerback, very aggressively shield that guy off, go get the ball with his hands. Then afterward, turn, make a move, make a spin move around a defender, run away from the defense. I would say, coming into the season, based on what we've seen from him in the past, I don't know if people would say that he was like, oh, he's an unbelievably fast wide receiver, right? More like body control, tremendous hands, natural, smooth, all those things. He looked fast too, on top of everything else. So
because I thought he was going to get caught down the sideline. I thought of it like the New Mexico defenders that were kind of trailing him. I thought like they might catch him, and then he just had
not only that, but he wasn't even like at that one down the near sideline where we were, on the west side, going from north to south. It didn't even look like he was running full speed, and they still weren't catching him. No, granted, look, it's New Mexico, right? It's not Kansas State. It's not Utah. It's not what he's going to face in the Big 12. But my goodness, I mean, you couldn't really ask for a better start for someone who his quarterback, Noah Fafita, says is the best player in college football. I don't know if that's true, but he's certainly in the conversation.
Made a
And
case.
he is very, very forcefully put himself near the top of the list for the Biletnikoff Award. No one in Arizona has ever won that particular award. And he is a candidate for that as well. He's not going to put up a 10, 304, and 4 every single week. But who knows what he's capable of, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
now
look at the last 3 games.
yeah.
Going
Now
back to last season.
the one thing that's also worth noting, I think, about this is that for whatever reason, New Mexico did not double team him on a regular basis. I don't know if any other team is going to make that mistake. Like, they're going to be like, you know what, T-Mac, you're going to get bumped at the line by a cornerback. We might send a linebacker into your area. We're going to have a safety over the top, and we're going to make someone else beat us. I don't know if Northern Arizona is capable of pulling off that game plan, but I bet you Kansas State and Utah are going to try. And that's going to be super fascinating to see when we get to those games. If they're really making a concerted effort to take him away, who else is going to step up and catch the rock?
Bronco Mendenhall, New Mexico's head coach, said after the game that, hey, they tried to mix things up. Like, they had zone coverage, man coverage. Like, they were shifting their defenses. But Arizona did a really good job of kind of moving T-Mac all around the field. I was looking at Arizona's stats on Pro Football Focus, and he had 9 snaps as a slot receiver. And when you have a 6'5" athletic freak like that in the slot, there's probably some poor safety who's lined up on him one-on-one, like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. And I think Arizona did a really good, as much as people want to give New Mexico guff for not slowing down T-Mac, I also think Arizona did a really nice job of kind of moving him around the field.
Yeah, his slot percentage was 31%, 29 pass routes. So I'm going to try here while we're on the air to look up and see how that compares to the pass, if I can figure out how to do that. But you love seeing it, right? Like, you don't want to be static on offense and play your best guy, put him in the same spot all the time, because that just makes it easier to defend him. Move him around the formation, use him in the slot, use him outside, get creative. And they did all those things. And I give a lot of credit to Noah Fafita too for hitting him in stride over and over, right? Like, it's hard, or it's easier to run after the catch when you don't have to slow down.
Yeah.
Right. And on those crossing routes, which were super effective in that game, he'd always hit him on the money, in stride, didn't have to slow down. He could just keep going, get past the defense, and head downfield.
Didn't have to bend his body or do anything. Got him right in stride to where he was able to just keep going. And Noah Fafita put up a masterclass too. Even though it wasn't probably his best passing performance. I go back to that game against ASU last year where he set the program record for passing. That's crazy that Noah Fafita and Tetairoa McMillan both own the passing and receiving records at Arizona in a single game. Just unbelievable. But the offense, though, a little bit interesting over the course of the night. Didn't really run the ball that much in the first half. And then in the second half, they were able to find their rhythm a little bit. Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt ended up rushing for over 100 yards. Quali Conley had 3 touchdowns. 3 of those touchdowns, or 3 of those rushing touchdowns that Arizona had, Caden Luke, CDO star, former CDO star, Tucson native, was lined up as a fullback, as a leading blocker. Arizona also had formations that had 6 offensive linemen. Where we saw some 2 tight end sets. Like, it was very interesting to see the evolution of Arizona's offense. And we still have yet to establish who's going to be that guy that's going to be wide receiver number 2 that can help out T-Mac in the passing game. It was a very strange game offensively for Arizona.
A lot of big plays, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of big plays. They didn't really get into any kind of a rhythm until the second half, when they started to get the running game going a little bit. I'm sure that was the conversation in the locker room at halftime. Like, hey, we gotta get the ground game in gear here. We have to establish that part. The term balance is thrown around a lot and means different things to different people. I think Mike Leach used to say that balance was like making sure that all of your playmakers got the ball about the same number of times, no matter how that was. He obviously threw the ball almost all the time. It's not 50-50 anymore. In the NFL, even a lot of college programs, you're liable to see like 60% passing and 40% running, but you have to have that threat. You have to be able to establish the line of scrimmage because it just opens everything else up.
So we had to take a little break because the Big 12 announced that Tetairoa McMillan is your Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. Of course, we're talking about T-Mac, and the Big 12 announces him as the first ever Arizona player to get Big 12 weekly honors. How about that? It's T-Mac.
Breaking news during the podcast, although it wasn't exactly huge news or surprising news because we knew this was going to happen. He's going to be a candidate for National Player of the Week as well.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, Justin, about how often T-Mac lined up in the slot. I looked at Pro Football Focus, looked back to the last 2 years and compared simply in the slot versus lined up outside. And according to what I'm seeing here, it's 31% in this first game. Last season, 17.3%.
Wow.
Previous season, 16.9%. So that was no accident. That was not our imagination. That could be a one-off, who knows? But I bet you that they're going to move him around in the formation a lot more. And that's smart, right? Yeah. Some teams, they might not want to put their best corner in the slot. They might want to keep their best corner on one side of the field. I bet you when they face Colorado that Travis Hunter is going to follow him everywhere he goes, but not everybody has a Travis Hunter. Very few teams do. So I think that's a good strategy by Arizona. You should do everything you possibly can to get your best player open in space.
I can't wait for that Colorado game in Tucson. Travis Hunter versus T-Mac. Travis Hunter versus Takario Davis. Oh, man, that's going to be must-see TV. Lev, you think that's probably going to be the most NFL scouts that have ever been to Arizona Stadium in your time covering Arizona football between Arizona and Colorado?
When you put when you preface it with "in my time," then yes, for sure. Because during my time, there haven't been a ton of NFL prospects. That's changed. Changed during the Jed Fish era. 3 players were drafted this past year, including a first rounder in Jordan Morgan. But that game, especially with Shedeur Sanders, being the quarterback for Colorado, a potential first-round pick. A lot of scouts, a lot of eyeballs. Hey, man, I don't know. Depending on how things go, maybe that'll be the big noon game.
Oh, maybe. Oh, man, one could only hope.
Which
noon in October in Tucson.
Is that game in October?
It is.
Okay, so if it's in October, that means it would be a 9 a.m. kickoff here. It's not usually what they prefer, but who knows? I don't know.
Sign me up.
Or, hey, I don't know. Maybe if things go really well, game day would come here.
That's what I'm saying. Get Dion come out with his Shady Ray sunglasses. Oh, man. I'm here for it. But anyways, going back to Arizona football.
Yes.
In the season opener against New Mexico. So we talked about T-Mac. We talked about how great he is.
Yeah.
Record-setting performance. Probably the best Arizona receiver ever. Arguably the best Arizona football player of all time. He's
got a chance. Yep.
But on the defensive side of the ball, hold on real quick. Before we get to defense, can I say that Tyler Luke got snubbed for Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week? Because the man set a career-long 54-yard field goal, also had a 46-yarder, 7 extra points, or 7 PATs, and 11 touchbacks. New Mexico didn't return a single one of his kicks. I don't know. I think that Tyler Luke got robbed of Special Teams Player of the Week in the Big 12, but solid performance by him. And Michael Salgado Medina didn't have any bad punts.
They had only one punt. It was good.
One punt? Yeah.
His holding was good. There was one bad snap at the end of the game. I don't think that was his fault. That was it was a short hop back to the holder. But good job by him. It'll be tough. It'll be, challenging for the true freshmen when they go on the road for the first time and there's a pressure situation. The crowd's going completely bonkers and you got to get that hold down. Maybe the snap isn't perfect.
Yep.
So those are, important jobs that we don't talk about very much unless somebody screws up. So hopefully Michael Salgado Medina will not screw up.
But the defense, Lev, very interesting stuff there with Arizona's defense, because throughout training camp, offense was trying to marry all these concepts and trying to get used to the verbiage and the communication. And the offense struggled throughout most of training camp. Like, we saw Noah Fafita not play at his best. We saw the offensive line not play at their best as one cohesive group. Wide receivers would drop passes and not be on the same page as Noah Fafita. And I think they both traded punches. Offense, defense, both had their exchanges in practice. But if you were to tell me what side of the ball was better coming out of training camp, I would have said the defense. Like, Arizona's defense is going to bring it. And they kind of had a promising start, right? Jacob Manu got a TFL, really set the tone for the night. And I'm like, okay, they're playing aggressive. This is the kind of defense that Dwayne Aquino wants to play. But then the athleticism of a quarterback like Devin Dampier being able to, as you put it in your 5 takeaways, he's very slippery and would get out and would find these lanes to maneuver and pick up yardage. He led the Lobos in rushing with, I think, 130. Had a bunch of passing yards, had a really good sequence with Luke Wysong in the first half, made a couple of highlight catches. And the defense, I thought, really struggled. Now, they did get better, I thought, but man, little concerning that New Mexico was kind of able to really run the football. And a big part of it was because of the defensive line play, especially on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, look, they were better in the second half. New Mexico had 305 yards in the first half, 166 in the second. They averaged 7.3 yards per play in the first half, 4.4 yards in the second. So there was improvement. That was good to see. A couple things worried me. Number one, the lack of rush discipline against a mobile quarterback. I just cannot imagine that it was the game plan to just go flying upfield or crash inside, or all of the kind of mistakes that, at least in my view, especially the defensive ends were making, that were leaving those lanes open for Dampier to run. That was number one. And number two was the tackling in the open field. It was not very sound. Yeah. They had, according to PFF,
16 missed tackles.
16 missed tackles.
Yeah.
In that game. Well, it looks like 15. They might have changed it, as they do over the course of the week when they review the film a few times, but 15 missed tackles. And Brent Brennan, he kind of foreshadowed this. He did an interview with the U of A football reporter, where he said, like, his number one concern was tackling, because you just don't do very much of it during training camp anymore. And it's hard to,
or you can, but they choose not to.
Yeah. Almost everybody chooses not to.
Which I get.
Yeah. Because you don't want to get your guys injured.
Yes.
Right. So
I get it.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they will try to simulate live tackling as much as they can this week. I'm certain that's something that we will talk to Brent Brennan about when we meet with him about an hour or so from now. But they took a lot of bad angles. I saw a lot of misses in the open field. And hey, Devin Dampier is a very good athlete. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. But they're going to face good athletes over the course of the season, whether it's a quarterback or running back or wide receiver or whatever positions those are. And they've got to improve, getting themselves in better position, being more fundamentally sound, not diving after ball carriers, which is something I feel like a little bit too much of in that game. So yeah, a little disappointing to see that from the defense, considering that aside from the D line, they had a lot of guys back, right? Pretty much the entire back end. Dwayne Aquino borrowing the system that had been in place right there. So there wasn't a huge learning curve there. I don't know. I feel like they just didn't execute that well. I also feel like they didn't show a lot in that game, like your beloved dollar package, Justin, which you love almost as much as your dog Barkley, who we just heard there a second ago. They didn't show it one time. Yeah. In that game. So, I feel like maybe they were holding back a little bit, and I think they're probably going to hold back next week as well, and then show some stuff that we haven't seen when they get to the Kansas State and Utah games.
13 defensive linemen were played in that game against Mexico. I thought maybe Joe Ciamalo was being a little over dramatic, or I don't know, hyperbolic when he said, I want to play 12 defensive linemen. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. And then they ended up playing 13.
Yeah,
But
he was understating things, actually.
yeah. But how much of it is, the first couple of games against New Mexico and NAU, how much of this is essentially a trial run? And you're really going to get a trial run and see who's cut for Power 4 football when you go on the road and play against Kansas State. I don't imagine 13 defensive linemen being used in one single game. I don't know. Maybe Joe Ciamalo is going to prove me wrong. He certainly did in that first game by playing 13, but very interesting. And it was like hockey lineup changes. Like all four guys would come off the field. And that was something that worked last year for Arizona's defensive line. It kept guys fresh. And I think it was that kind of mindset, or that concept of constantly rotating your defensive linemen in and out. It keeps those big guys fresh for the fourth quarter, which you saw in the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. So
I think it's brilliant to do it this way, and I agree with you. I think it's like trial by fire. Like, let's see what we've got. We're going to play everybody, and then maybe they'll pare it down to 9 or 10 the rest of the way. And have the guys who aren't in that rotation, they will have played, they will have had experience, they'll be ready to step in. I'm surprised, frankly, that they didn't do it at one of the linebacker spots. We expect Jacob Manu to be on the field. We knew Tay Brown was going to be the starter, but Tay Brown played the most snaps of anybody. And I thought we'd see a little bit more of Kamuela Ka'ihu, who looked really good in camp as well, and I thought was right there alongside Tay Brown. He did have an injury at one point in camp, so maybe he's a little bit slow to come back. He came in kind of toward the end of the game. I wonder if we'll see a little bit more rotating at that spot too, for the same reason. Like good for Tay Brown that he was able to win the job in the offseason, but he hasn't proven anything yet, right? It's not like he's an established starter. So I feel like the competition is still ongoing there to some degree, even though the snaps might suggest otherwise.
Lev, I don't mean to go full old man yelling at the cloud right now, but I do have one criticism of Arizona on defense.
Yeah.
And that's the silly penalties.
Oh, yeah.
Like Takario Davis and those personal foul penalties. Like, you're a high profile player that is very valuable to Arizona. Those kind of things are just very silly. Brent Brennan even addressed that in the post-game press conference.
He called them selfish, right?
Selfish. And Genesis Smith, getting a turnover, great stuff, man. Like, it's amazing. But take your helmet off after you get to the sideline. Don't take it off while you're on the field, because then that's going to get you a penalty. These are just some of the things that guys need to keep in mind. But I'll step off my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Genesis obviously was very exuberant after getting the pick, and he's running toward the sideline, took his helmet off. But hey, this rule's been in place for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you can't take your helmet off on purpose out on the field, right?
Yeah.
With Takario, I don't know why he's engaged in so much trash talking.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to, it's a good way to get yourself kicked out of a game, which is exactly what happened. And speaking of Colorado, they're going to try to bait him into that sort of thing and to get him to get flagged.
On every team.
You just got to make the play, turn around, and go back to the huddle or get back to your position. I mean, I know it's a super emotional game and it's easy for us to say, but like you said, this is a very important player, right? I mean, this is the best corner on the team. This is someone who, could be a first-round pick eventually. He's got to be on the field. It does you no good if you're Arizona to have Takario Davis standing on the sideline because he got 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties.
Yeah, and I think every team looks at that, and the opposing coaches are going to be like, hey, this guy might have thin skin. Try to see what you could do. Don't get yourself in some trouble. But I think every team moving forward, especially Colorado, is going to try to bait Takario into doing something stupid. So All right, let's get off our soapboxes. Let's answer some mailbag questions. Lev, you got some leftover ones from last week. You address it on your Levitt on the field column. Let's answer some of your questions, but let's first answer Kyle Morse's question. What can we do to improve on defense? It looked like the old Kevin Sumlin Wildcats out there on defense. I think we addressed that. It's really the missed tackling, I think, needs to improve, which was kind of a strength with last year's team. You never saw Traden Stukes and Dalton Johnson and some of these other guys miss tackles. I think over the course of time, you'll see tackling get better, especially because now that they're getting more of those live reps. So they'll get used to it, I think. But what do you think the defense needs to improve on?
Yeah, being more disciplined when it comes to rushing the passer, especially when you're facing a mobile quarterback, tackling. And then a third thing I would say is just finishing the play. Like there was that one catch that was made down the right sideline that Gunnar Maldonado looked, for all intents and purposes, like he was going to have an interception on that play. Like he read it right, jumped the route, and somehow he didn't come up with the ball. I mean, you got to make that play. You know, it's plain and simple. Or minimally knock the ball down. So they were just a hair off. You know, it's not like they were getting, like, Traden Stukes was kind of like right there a bunch on the passes that were completed against him. Gunnar had 2 completed against him. He was right there, just half a second late. You know, maybe it's reading the play, you know, a little bit faster so that you can make that move slightly sooner and turn a completion into a pass breakup or an interception.
All right, Lev, let's turn to some of your leftovers.
Yeah, I'll start with one. I got an email from Jeffrey Radin. He said, "Why did number 0 Flo not play?" He is, of course, referring to Justin Flo, the linebacker who transferred to Arizona last year. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, went to Oregon, had a lot of injuries when he was at Oregon, came here to try to, you know, restart his career. And it's been kind of up and down since he's been here, to say the least. You know, he was not expected to start, which he did not. But he didn't play any snaps at all on defense. And so I've got a couple thoughts on that. One, you know, some other guys are ahead of him. Number 2, like I said, I feel like they didn't show us everything in that game. And there might be some packages that feature Justin Flo as a blitzer that we have yet to see. We saw it every once in a while in spring, every once in a while in training camp. They're trying to find what he does best and just have him do that, you know, and that might be his thing. We saw him on kickoff coverage running down the field. It was 11 touchbacks, so there was no opportunities to actually make a tackle on a kickoff return, but that's a role that he's carved out. And I think we are going to see him on defense at some point, just not in these first 2 games.
That was a question I got from Ice Cream Paint Job. He says, why don't they use Flo as an edge rusher on 3rd and long / passing downs? Simple assignment. See quarterback, sack quarterback. Seems like a waste to have him on kickoff when Luke's cannon of a leg always results in a touchback. I think that Justin Flo is a supreme athlete. I mean, he is like shredded and built like a WWE superstar. And he has one really good trait, and that's hitting and tackling. And last year, you saw him against Mississippi State. You saw him against, you know, run-oriented teams, and he was special. And he was able to make plays and tackle the running back. But I think him in a Micah Parsons type of role, and Danny Gonzalez says, like, do not compare him to Micah Parsons. He is not Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is a special defensive football player. There's only one Micah Parsons, but I think Justin Flo in that type of role could give Arizona some versatility. And then when you're talking about adding him and his athleticism and his explosiveness, the dollar package defense that has 7 defensive backs, like there's some versatility that Arizona could do defensively, but they have to do the basics like run containment and also make tackles in the open field. All right, let's move on to another question. This one comes in from Christian 40. Any plans to build a rotation for the linebackers Manu and Brown looked gas at times. Is Flo really that unusable? Kind of goes along with what we were talking about. I don't know. I think we just haven't seen everything. Lev, an injury update question. This one comes in from UA Catmandu. Rhino update. Did the D practice tackling during the fall? Because they sure did wrap up early on in the game. We already addressed the second question. As far as Rhino Tapatotai, he did leave in the second half with what appeared to be a leg injury. We saw Matthew Lotto, a true freshman, come in and take some reps at tackle with Jonas Avianea at the other side. Man, Arizona needs to get Rhino back because that is a valuable position. And Rhino, I thought, didn't look bad in that game on Saturday. I thought he looked like a decent left tackle, but if they're relying on a true freshman to play tackle, especially with a big game against Kansas State coming up, that could be very problematic for Arizona. So we don't have any update on Rhino, but we'll find out this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if he didn't miss at least a couple of weeks based on what that looked like. When you're talking about a sprained knee, if it's an MCL, it's probably a few weeks. If it's an ACL, that's obviously a different story. But I thought Matthew Lotto did a good job once he went in there. They ran the ball well when he was on the field. I don't think they had any intent of playing him this season.
No.
But stuff happens. Like Michael Wooten was ticketed to be the backup left tackle, pretty clearly established in that role. He got hurt during training camp, so that kind of opens the door for someone else to step in. And that person happens to be a true freshman, Matthew Lotto, who played mostly right tackle with Jonah Sava-Inaya switching to left tackle. I'm going to ask Brent Brennan today whether Jonah ever practiced there or if he just is that talented and that good that he could just go there and play on that side without having the reps. Because I don't think we ever saw him. There was one day, Justin, where you thought you saw him at left tackle and you were all excited about it, but we all kind of dismissed it and thought it was a figment of your imagination, but maybe you were right.
I was
maybe he was playing over there one day.
I swear to God, I saw him at left tackle. You guys were like, okay, I'll have whatever he's having. I'm telling you, he played left tackle.
Yeah, we all just thought you were sleep deprived, which is true, by the way.
Yeah,
you are. But
he did play left tackle in high school.
Sure, usually the best lineman does. Yeah.
Anyways, you got any more?
Yeah, I have a few here. Okay. I got two of them from Catbacker, who's at Zona 7378. Is this year going to be like in the past, other than last year, where our starters are capable of winning against anybody, but our depth at key positions is the reason as to why we can't sustain success? What do you think about that one, Justin?
Yeah, I would say so. I go back to that 2015 season, just before you got to Tucson, Lev, because you were at the tail end of 2015, right? The New Mexico Bowl was your first game? Okay.
Yes.
So that season, as you went, when you prepared for this job, Arizona was one of the top teams in the country. And they were ranked. They had a great quarterback in Anu Solomon. They had the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, it's Scooby Wright, coming back. And it was looking like, hey, after going to the Pac-12 South Championship, maybe Arizona could put together another magical season. And then what happened? The injuries at those key positions, like quarterback with Anu Solomon and also Scooby Wright in Arizona, after going to the Pac-12 Championship and going to the Fiesta Bowl, ended up going to the New Mexico Bowl. Arizona fans have seen this time and time again, where they have high expectations and then they slip on the banana peel and then the season doesn't go as expected. I think attrition is so important for this year's Arizona team. And Arizona already has a scare with their starting left tackle, Rhino Tapatotai, experiencing some injuries. But if they can get him back and if he can stay healthy for the remainder of the season, if those offensive linemen, defensive linemen can avoid the injury bug, I think this Arizona team is going to be just fine.
I would say that there's only a handful of teams in the country that can truly withstand a rash of injuries at key positions. Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, these types of teams.
Yeah.
You can replenish your roster in the offseason easier and faster than you ever could before, thanks to the transfer portal, but you could also lose a lot of guys. And, when there's coaching changes like Arizona experienced, there's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of churn. I thought they did the best they could under a difficult set of circumstances to kind of rebuild the depth that they lost to the portal, to, guys from the recruiting class who ended up not, maybe they signed here or they signed here and then they left to go to Washington or wherever. You don't have as many players to choose from when you're in that situation, right? Like the portal opens in December, it closes in early January, and this all happened in mid to late January, right? Yeah. So you have kind of like whoever wasn't picked up during the first period, plus like whatever players are on the teams whose coaches have changed jobs.
Yeah.
So smaller pool of players. It's very challenging to fill in all of those holes. I thought they did about the best that they could under the circumstances. All right, I got one more from Catbacker.
Cool.
Here. He says, because of NIL and the transfer rules, isn't Arizona just a breeding ground for schools that can steal our good players because they can pay them more? The Fafita loyalty is rare. Yeah, I mean, look, there are unquestionably teams, programs that have more resources than Arizona does, right? I mean, there is a class system in college sports. It's no secret. And so there's a limit to what Arizona can do in the NIL space, but they're trying. They're trying really hard. I think, it's pretty robust in men's basketball from what we understand.
Yeah.
They were able to retain some guys who maybe could have gone to the NBA, been a late first round pick or been a second round pick or whatnot. So I think it's working pretty well there. I know baseball's been working on trying to get some sort of NIL program going. They're probably going to have more scholarships available in the new world. They're not going to have a full roster of 35 scholarship players. I don't think anybody is. Maybe in the SEC, they'll do that, but there will be more scholarship money available. Football, we're going to be in a space of 105 player roster. We're going to be in a place where you can give out partial scholarships, which you never could do before in football. So that's going to change the dynamic of roster building. And there's still going to be that NIL piece that's attached to it. And, Arizona's going to try to be a player in that game. I don't think they could swim at the deepest end of the pool. But if they can still be competitive for, those high 3-star type of recruits with not only NIL money, but hey, great weather, play for Brent Brennan, like someone who's going to take care of your son and groom him into not only a good football player, but a good person. You can sell those things and kind of pad your, you can pad the offer without actual cash changing hands.
And not only Brent Brennan, but the coaches that he has too. Like every single one of his coaches are really good developer of men, especially guys like Dwayne Aquina, Dino Babers. I've been very impressed with Josh Oglesby, the offensive line coach, and Matt Adkins, the tight ends coach as well. There's some good dudes that Arizona has on their football staff under Brent Brennan. And I think, with the college football playoff expanding, you can every now and again have a team that has just a really good collective group of players get a lightning in a bottle type of season and then get to the college football playoff. I don't think Arizona fans are crazy enough to shake their fists and clamor for Arizona to contend for national championships every single year. That's just not really possible at a place like Arizona. At least we just haven't seen it. But with the CFP now expanding to 12 teams, no longer it being 4, it's not, out of the realm of possibilities that where Arizona is contending every few years to be in a spot and contend for a national championship. So
can you go 7-5, 8-4 on a regular basis and then have those every 4 or 5 years, that magical run where you win 10 or maybe 11 games and hey man, win the conference and you're in the college football playoff. That was not simple as that. That was not really a possibility, or it wasn't a guarantee before in the Pac-12. I got one more for you.
Hold on. Before you answer that, one more thing real quick on the NIL front.
Yeah.
Is it sad that this weekend I thought about, man, an SEC team like South Carolina or whoever is going to throw the bag at Devin Dampier, and New Mexico is just not going to do a damn thing about it. Like, he's going to go to another program, get an NIL check, and Albuquerque or New Mexico is going to be like, well, there goes our star quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of speaks to that idea of being a developmental program, almost a farm system. And yeah, it is kind of sad. It's unfortunate, but there is a class system in college sports, and maybe it's only going to get that much more pronounced. Okay, my last question here is from Ivan, who also calls himself Left Wing Looney at UA. Who is someone under the radar you think will have a big season? Coming into the year, I would have said Kean Burnett, and I'm going to stick with that one, even though he had only 1 reception and I think 2 targets in the first game. He had an awesome training camp. He looked really good. He has a history with Noah Fafita. They played together in high school, so there's chemistry there. And the more the season evolves, the more teams are going to devote more resources to stopping Tetero and McMillan. Everyone else is going to have single coverage. And I think Kean Burnett is a difficult matchup for a safety or a linebacker. And I think he's going to have some huge games, some huge moments, and some important touchdowns during his junior season.
I'm going to go one offensive, one defensive guy. My offensive guy is Jeremiah Patterson, the junior college transfer receiver, who we didn't really see a lot of in that first game. But it goes back to what Lev was talking about, how Arizona is not showing everything. And let me just tell you, Jeremiah Patterson in training camp, in my opinion, was the second best receiver behind T-Mac. His speed, his ability to get out of his breaks and create separation, I think he's going to be a special player. We didn't see him return punts. All training camp, he was returning punts. And then we saw Jack Luttrell, the safety transfer from Tennessee. I'm wondering if that's Brent Brennan rolling out Jack so Kansas State prepares for him on film, and then they're just going to roll out Jeremiah Patterson for the big game. I wonder if that's going to be the case, but he's going to be great on special teams. I think he's going to be great as the slot receiver, and as Arizona continues to find that number 2 wide receiver, look for the guy wearing number 2 to step up in a big way. And then, that was my offensive guy.
Yeah, you had one on defense. Yeah.
Defensively, I think I'm going to go with Sterling Lane. Is he going to start? No. But as a rotational piece coming off the edge for the Wildcats this season, looked very promising in training camp and was a highly touted recruit in that 2022 recruiting class. Had all sorts of great offers, but has been very underwhelming in his 2 years at Arizona. Hasn't really seen the field. I look for him to step up in a big way this year.
Yeah, I'm just gonna before we get out of here, I'm gonna throw one out there on defense too. You inspired me. And I'm gonna say Tai Yungalele. Did not record a tackle on Saturday, but was very influential. I feel like the most effective and consistent defensive lineman that they had, pretty consistently pushing the pocket, getting pressure. He can play inside. He can play outside. He carries his weight really well. Like he's listed around 280 and he looks like someone who's like 250, right? Yeah. So just a naturally gifted and athletic big man who I think as the season goes on is going to start racking up those TFLs and sacks and is going to be someone that we're going to be talking about who we're not really talking about right now.
Real quick, Joseph52 says, I tried telling you T-Mac is the greatest Wildcats football player of all time. Are you ready to come to your senses and admit that? I never ruled out T-Mac being the GOAT. I just said we need to see his career be completed at Arizona. But, man, game 1 in his junior season, yeah, he's looking like he could be in that GOAT conversation. So I'll give you your flowers, Joseph52. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast. Huge thanks to all of you guys for submitting your mailbag questions. We'll try to do better next time. We'll answer more of your mailbag questions during next week's podcast. Later on this week, myself, Michael Lev, and sports editor Brett Farah will break down Arizona versus NAU. That's the Wildcats' next opponent, who just beat Lincoln 66-6, the Bishop Sycamore of colleges, a travel ball team from Oakland, California. That's who Northern Arizona beat last Saturday.
Yeah, we'll also have what we're calling our Big 12 Bonanza.
Yeah.
That's our picks. And we'll update the standings and see how we all did in week 1. I think I did okay.
Yep.
I don't know about you, Justin, but it's all kind of new, right? Teams that we're not familiar with. So there's bound to be some growing pains and some bumps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Many highs and probably way more lows when it comes to our
Definitely.
Big 12 bonanza. But we'll have that too on Thursday's pod.
Look forward to that. As always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out all of our coverage of Arizona football on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app.